Thanks very much. Well, thank you very much. Thanks very much. I'm so untechnical. I've written a few things down, and some of it's in red ink, and the red spotlights are killing the red ink. So I've actually got half a speech here. So you'll have to fill in the gaps. As Sakira said, I've been working with writers and producers and actors and lots of people doing films for a long time. And we've done really quite simple films, stories about how things are now, and stories from the past, about really big events in the past that have determined the world that we live in, determined how we live. And when I was asked to do this, I thought about the title Future Visions, and I thought, I can't do that. I don't know. I really don't know what it's going to be like. I can't imagine it. But there are a set of, when we've done stories about the past, there's a set of really unspoken tests we've had for choosing a story as to whether the story was worth the plight that people were in, the plight that people suffered, actually matched the various tests. And they were, in a curious way, Tony Benn summed them up. And he used to say it, he said it many times, many of you will have heard him say it, that people's demands are very simple. They need security. They need security to have a home. They need security to have a job that pays a wage that will sustain them and their family. They need being looked after when they're ill. They need a pension when they're old. And they need peace. They need a peaceful life. And when I think about the world that we should fight for, that's it. It's that security. But I think there's something to add to that. And what I would want to add is about our place in the world and our sense of living, our need to live in peace, and what we should do to sustain that and to make that happen. And for the environment that we are now faced, probably when Tony Benn began his political career, was when I was a kid, that wasn't on the agenda. We assumed the world would continue, and we could imagine it. It was into infinity. There was no point at which the world would collapse. The world would just go on. And of course, we know now that sadly isn't the case, and that the protection of the environment is absolutely now it's now what we used to call a transitional demand. Maybe we should still call it that. It's a demand that we absolutely have to make, because we know it is collapsing. So that's if I were to have a future vision that we would fight for, that's it. That's where we go. But where are we? We know where we are. We are in a state of alienation, insecurity on all those fronts we've talked about. And the people here know the state of the world we're in. I don't need to waste time going through it, except to say two things. That I read by that very good journalist George Monbiot in The Guardian, that not always a good paper, and not recently, but nevertheless, George did write that we have 100 harvests left in this country, 100 harvests. Well, that concentrates the mind, doesn't it? Because that's my grandchildren's children won't see a harvest. That concentrates the mind on where we are. And also, we could speak a lot about how the world is now. Also, we have undermined the United Nations through our illegal war. So that set back the cause of international law, and international law is vital if we are to live in peace. And the third thing is that we have created a society where fear and hunger are used to discipline the poorest and most vulnerable people. And that's where we are. That's where we are. And so, again, I'm telling a very simple story here. I had a history teacher who was a brilliant history teacher. His name is Sidney Reed Brett, and you can still read his books, get them somewhere in eBay or somewhere for sale. And he taught us how to make notes. And he said there were always, when you were discussing the event, there were root causes and there were immediate causes. And heaven help you if you confused your root cause with the immediate cause because you got detention. And so most of us got detention at some point. But I wanted to say, why are we where we are? And what's the immediate cause and what's the root cause? Because I think unless we understand the process that's brought us to this position, we can't really deal with how we're going to get out of it. Okay, so the immediate cause. The immediate cause we would all recognize, I think, as neoliberalism. The process by which capital, faced with problems in the 70s, had to re-establish itself as profitable. And so profit was the name of the game. The working class here was seen as too powerful. So Thatcher came in, laws against trade unions, provoked strikes that she could win, and allowed mass unemployment to rise. So there you had a three-pronged strategy, and the working class was much weaker, neoliberalism was underway, and we had unfettered competition. The big corporations got their flexible workforce, and profit and greed became the motor that drove industry. Alan Sugar had a great quotation, if I haven't got my notes, I think I can remember it. He said, there's nothing the matter with greed. Greed is what every true businessman is after. I mean, it's the motor of the economy. Great thinker, clearly. Alan Sugar. So work goes to the cheapest. It goes to the workers' elite grass first, to the ones who get the work. The state is shrunk. Our public assets are stripped. So the health service becomes a place for private healthcare companies. The gains of 45 were lost, mainly lost, not much left. And as an example of where work goes to, go to China, where the working conditions are intolerable, where suicides are common. And the one story, just to illuminate the whole global catastrophe, 17-year-old Chinese girl, Tian Yu, flung herself from a fourth-floor balcony because she was doing 6-day weeks, 12-hour shifts. Shift varied, sometimes the night, sometimes daytime. Just one of many, many, and was paralyzed from the waist downwards forever. So she's one martyr to the neoliberal, globalized economy. But not only that, it was the wars for spheres of influence. So we went to war, okay, because we needed to control with the states that part of the globe. That would be our sphere of influence. So that's the immediate cause, neoliberalism. But the root cause, of course, we know goes much deeper. And it's rooted in the Industrial Revolution. It's rooted in the rise of the working class to serve the industrial development. And it's a society based on the conflict of classes. Two classes, one that works and sells its labor, one that owns with financiers, with political people to run it, to run the economy. And that class conflict is rooted in the Industrial Revolution. Its political settlement was the 17th century with the Civil War, when a class gained political power to allow capital to work. And that's where it began. And neoliberalism was not an aberration, it was the logical consequence of smaller companies, family businesses being taken over by bigger companies, and so on and so on. I mean, we used to have how many car firms here? So if I could recite them all when I was a kid. Now we have one, but we don't even have one. The Japanese have it. I mean, that's the logic. And neoliberalism is the logic of that process. And we have to know our history if we're going to fight it. And I think I'm afraid it's back of the envelope history, but it's essential that we see it in that historical perspective if we're going to fight for those simple demands that we had at the beginning. So that's where we are. And it's a struggle for consciousness. And the consciousness that we're given, that we inherit, is that freedom equals the free market. And we could talk about that at length. But one simple example that it's very interesting. I mean, this is what is remarkable about this arts festival. And it's a wonderful event, a wonderful, wonderful event, is there ain't no sponsors. There's no sponsors. But if you go to a concert, if you go to the Posh Theatre, if you go to an art gallery, the big art galleries, what is it? It's the Shell Portrait Gallery, it's the banks are sponsoring the opera, the theatre is sponsored, universities get sponsored, i.e. we have no culture without big business. Big business is at the heart of our civilization and always will remain so. And that's the consciousness we've got to fight. So coming to the big question, can Jeremy's Labour Party do it? Well, this is the big question. This is the big question. Can we get there? Well, I'm afraid, look back, the record ain't good. The record ain't good for the Labour Party. From the very beginning, the plan was crumbs from the rich man's table. Go back to 1926, the early leaders, Ramsay MacDonald, the general strike. Ramsay MacDonald said, well, you sort that out, I'm going home. And he went to bed. Go to the Spanish Civil War, the Labour Party wouldn't back the Spanish Republicans. The Communist Party to form the International Brigades. Many rank and file, I'm sure, Labour supporters went, but not the party. No encouragement there. They supported the Non-Intervention Pact. And, of course, dash through history another 50 years, the miners' strike. Where was the Labour leadership then? Some great MPs, the rank and file were there in their hundreds of thousands. Where's Messrs Kinnock and Hattersley gone missing like Ramsay MacDonald? So it's not a great record. And, of course, we don't even get to our friend Tony Blair. We don't even want to mention his name. So now, why is Jeremy Corbyn, first of all, can he do it? And why is he attracting such hostility? He's attracting such hostility because, and I think this is why it's such a historic moment and why we are so excited, really, like kids. We're so excited. Because he's the first leader who's going to restrict the power of capital. He's going to say, get out of the health service, get out of the transport system. We're going to build council houses with public money. We're going to invest in industry with public money. We're going to invest with our collective wealth into the places where where the old industries have died and they have no jobs. Now that's curtailing capital just when it has to expand. It's on such a fast turnaround. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And he's saying no more. So that marks him down as an enemy of the ruling class very clearly. And that's why he's getting such stick. And absolutely. But not only that, he's been so uncool in Blair's terms that he's actually gone and stood on a picket line as leader. No other leader's done that. No other leader. Attlee, who formed the welfare state, all credit to him, he sent the troops in to break strikes. He was on the right wing of the party. He sent in the troops to break strikes. Jeremy Corbyn is one of us. Absolutely. So just quickly going through the obstacles. This is in Reading, so I'm going to have to make this bit up. Going through the obstacles he's going to face. Well, we've obviously got the media and the BBC and the press, and they're all hostile. And the attacks will continue, because they're not doing it as a test. They're doing it because he is a threat to them. So they will continue. And just to give one sample, if you can, hope you've been taking the medication, because here's a quote. Here's a quote from that left paper, The Guardian Observer, from one of their columnists. And she's talking about the Corbyn supporters. And this is what she wrote. They're peddling everything from pungent whiffs of anti-Semitism, sexism, and other forms of bullying and discrimination to meaningless hipster drivel delivered with sub-zero acumen. Now that's from a paper on our side. So God knows what the Mail and the Express are saying. Anyway, that's what they're up to. Of course, the Labour right wing will continue. Kinnock, of course, has already been at it, and of course, we do need lessons from Lord Kinnock on how to win elections. He lost every one. And even this is when I get worried about the calls for unity, because these guys ain't going to unite. No. Tom Watson, you're a rabble, according to Tom Watson. But more interesting than that, when Tom Watson wrote his letter to Tony Blair, when Blair was resigning, this is what he said. This is after the war, after the privatisation of the health service has continued. He said, your leadership has been visionary and remarkable. The party owes you an incalculable debt. That's to the warmonger Blair, from your deputy leader. Okay, so is unity on the card? Because I raise this because if the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn is going to win, can we win with these people there pulling at Jeremy's coattails, pulling him back, undercutting the message, not speaking clearly? Can we meet them? And there are two elements that make me question that seriously. The purge. Can the people who organise the purge stay in control of the party that is going to fight on that platform when a quarter of the membership was refused the right to vote, full members? I think not. And there is a purge that I would recommend to you, actually. There is a purge. And this is a purge. It's up to you. This is a purge of... I should say, we all know we have cabinet government in this country. When a key decision is taken, when any decision is taken by government, it's taken by the cabinet. It's not taken by the Prime Minister. He's first among equals. The cabinet takes the decision. Right. The decision to go to war in Iraq was generally reckoned to be illegal, immoral, would lead to great destabilisation of the region, would lead to hundreds of thousands of deaths. Everybody said at the time, many people here will have been on that march, whether 1 million or 2 million, massive march, huge march, and elsewhere across the world. No shortage of information, no shortage of legal opinion. The cabinet that took that decision to fight that war, to kill those people, I would urge members of the Labour Party to say, should they retain their Labour Party membership? I think that would send a message that this Labour Party had changed for real, and they weren't going to put up with those kind of lies and criminals and murderers again. Okay, nearly there. And of course, if and when Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party get into power, on that programme, there will be worldwide opposition that will make the opposition we've been talking about child's play. It'll be the IMF, it'll be the World Bank, It'll be the EU, if the EU is still in position, and the Dirty Tricks Brigade. They'll all be there. Think how they destabilised Allende. Think how they destabilised the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. Example after example after example. So we have to consider the extent of the opposition that we will face if we are serious. And if we're not serious, well, the tide will just swamp right across this little sandcastle we've built, and it'll blend into the sand. So it's a big, big journey we're undertaking, because sooner it will start with, and of course, a new Labour government would have to be careful. They wouldn't have to be too provocative. They'd have to be very tactical. But sooner or later, that contradictions and those conflicts that were set in place in the 17th century, came to fruition throughout the Industrial Revolution, led to the formation of trade unions, led to the struggles, the gains of 1945, led to neoliberalism. Sooner or later, those conflicts will become in our face. They won't go away. So they're there. And that's what we have to, as we're on the nursery steps, that's what we have to know is there. And think and consider and work out how we're going to fight back. And what have we got on our favour? What we have is our solidarity. What we have is the worldwide working class. What we have is our internationalism. What we have is our imagination, which Momentum has remarkably liberated and will liberate in these few days. It has new ways of working. I mean, we've got a huge amount on our side. We've got our story on our side. And I worked with a great writer called Jim Allen, socialist, from down the road in Manchester. Although his family was Irish, he said his father was a Saturday night Irishman. And Jim had a great phrase. He said, if you're going to be a socialist, you need the map and the compass. And what he meant by that was you need to open the books. We need to know our history. We need to know the great people who have fought for socialism over the years, from Wat Tyler and John Ball in the Peasants' Revolt to Gerard Winstanley in the Civil War, through the Union to James Connolly that Paul quoted so well. We need to know our international writers and thinkers and actors. And yes, we need to know about Marx. And yes, we need to know about the Russian Revolution. And also, whisper it, we need to know about the guy who fought Stalin and actually stood up for the gains of the revolution against the deformation that Stalin imposed. And yes, he's important. And his name's Trotsky. And we shouldn't let them deny us the right to read about our history and know it, because that's our strength. And their attempt to criminalize people and call us by these names, Marxists, Trots, they don't know what the words mean, but we do, and they're our strength. Okay. I've got one last thing. It's my wallet, but there isn't much in it. And I thought I'd end talking about the future. Some of you may recognise this word. Sorry, I've overrun. Some of you may recognise these words, but actually, if you take them at their literal meaning, they're not bad. They're not bad to be going to. So if we're speaking about a vision, this is it. It is to secure for the workers, by hand or by brain, the full fruits of their industry and the most equitable distribution thereof that may be possible upon the basis of the common ownership of the means of production, distribution and exchange, and the best obtainable system of popular administration, i.e. workers' control, of each industry or service. That'll do for me. Let's get there. Thank you.